Hey guys, welcome to today's video. In this video, let's create a game character. So there's going to be a low poly game character, fully textured, and we will take it as far as also rigging the character and creating a fun pose. So let's go through the entire process of jumping into ZBrush, then transferring our character to Substance Painter for textures, and then jumping into Maya for some, somewhat basic rigging. All right, so let's get started. All right, so here I am in ZBrush. How do we start this project or this little experiment? So to do this, there's a couple things I need. One is to definitely grab a really good reference. So for our reference, let's use this. There's a website that I personally love, and a lot of times you can find some amazing references, especially for stylized toy-like stuff. It's called SideShow.com. Many of you, I'm sure, know it. But in this case, I simply searched Rhino, and this is the reference that I see, one of their products. And I'll include a link to this in my below the video in case you want to check it out, or maybe you even want to get one of these. All right. So yeah, let's use this as a reference. So I'm just going to grab a couple of these images, and you can see this is actually, there's more, right? It says 8 more photos. If you click on it, it goes into this really nice view, and you can get some awesome reference or inspiration images from some of this stuff. All right, so I'm just gonna get a couple. And then the other thing that we need is a good solid base mesh. And for that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the base mesh of my stylized male on my Gumroad, and I'm gonna give this away for free to you guys, just as a thank you for watching this video and following my tutorials, right? So below this video, there's gonna be also a link to grab this guy for free. And if you click on the link, this will actually say 0, and you will get a ZTL file and an OBJ file. And if you are using an older version of ZBrush to follow this tutorial, you can use the OBJ. If you are up to date, you can use the ZTL because I am using 2024, right? So, but it doesn't really matter. They're literally identical. All right, very cool. Let's jump back into ZBrush. And let's continue talking about other things that we might need. So let me actually pull up my reference. And for my reference, I'm using an app that many of you know, I'm sure, called PureRef, P-U-R-E-R-E-F. And that's something that you can grab and download and use as a reference placeholder that kind of floats over your 3D applications. And that's pretty much the best app that was ever made. So grab this as well. Okay, so these are the 2 images I chose, and they are, I think, pretty much perfect to get us going, right? So let's think about this. So we got the base mesh, right? We're gonna use that base mesh to get started. And we obviously we have the reference. Now, the only other thing that we're missing to get started is a set of teeth and a tongue, right? The base mesh that I'm giving away does not have any facial elements at all. So instead of, taking the time to model the mouth with all the teeth, is there a better or a quick way we can access some of these elements and just customize them, right? Almost like another version of a base mesh. Let's use this demo head. If I double click on this demo head, let's see if we can literally just steal his teeth, right? Once you open the demo head, you can see in the subtools, there's actually 2 layers. One is going to be the actual mesh for the head. I'm going to turn that off. And the second one is going to be these eyes and teeth. And as I'm looking at these, I think this is going to be exactly what I need, right? So let's use this instead. So the first thing we should do before we even import our base mesh into ZBrush, let's kind of get these ready, right? So one thing we need to do is get rid of these eyeballs, right? So to do this, I'm going to go to split. I'm going to do, let's do auto groups. And by the way, to follow my tutorial, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can grab my UI. That's in the community tab. You can just activate it just maybe for this video, and then you can switch it back. But you can download all of this, and it also includes all the brushes as well. So keep that in mind. All right, so if I turn my polyframe on and do auto groups, you can see that all three of these pieces are separate, right? And what I could do is I could just go to, let's go to split and we'll do group split. So I'll click on that and say okay. And that's going to separate my teeth, the eyes, and the face or the head, right? So let me take the head and just literally just delete it. I don't need it. And I'm gonna also delete these eyes as well. And that's gonna leave me just with these teeth. I'm gonna press F on my keyboard. I'm gonna press F again to kind of center it. And now if I click Alt and left mouse click, I can zoom in and out. If anyone is new, that's very helpful. You could do that. And now let's take a look at this. How can we get this ready, right? One of the things we need if we want to follow this as a reference is we could see that the teeth are open, right? These are not. So a couple things, and then the tongue, maybe we want to do something different with the tongue, although this looks already very similar to what I'm seeing here. But let's separate these. How do you take this piece here and separate it into three different elements, right? So what we could do is we could just use zModeler, and let me just maybe make this a little bit smaller, put it over here. Let's use zModeler to separate this into elements, right? So what I could do is I can, for example, go to zModeler and let me separate the tongue, right? Now, if I press the double on, I can see how this tongue is connected to the bottom of the mouth, and you can see that everything is like one big island, right? It's all connected. So what we need to do is we need to separate it in order to maybe have a little more control over these meshes, right? So what I could do is I can hover over a face, press spacebar, go to poly groups, let's do single poly, and let's hold on the Alt key, and let's just start selecting all of this stuff here, going all the way around to the back of the mesh. And I don't really need to go all the way around, just enough where I can separate this island from here, right? Nice. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let's see, I'm still in poly group and I'm still in single poly, so I'm gonna click on this, and then while holding down the left click the entire time, you can press Alt to change the color if you wanted to. So keep that in mind. Let me just switch it to some other color. And now what I want to do is I want to take all of these and match them to this color. So I'm going to hover over this, go to polygroup island, right? Because now this is separated by this green light, this green line, that means all of this is an island. So if I click on this, it's going to automatically select the tongue and group it with this group, right? Very cool. So that means if I do Control Shift and click, you can see that now I isolated the tongue by itself, which means I can control it and mold it to whatever I want without, you know, worrying about the teeth, right? Let's do Control Shift and click to bring everything back. So that's nice. Let's do the same thing with the teeth, right? I'm gonna go to Group Split and say okay. So now I have this on a separate layer. I can even hide it if I wanted to. And let me do the same thing with these teeth, right? Let's separate the top and the bottom. Just so we have more control, right? So same thing, let's just find a place where we can, I'm gonna press X to turn my active symmetry on. Holding down the Alt key, I'm just gonna start dragging along this line and start selecting all of these polygons here. And this one here. And just like before, right, I literally just created a line, which is going to be, you know, the same on both sides, right? Now, if I go back to poly group, single island, if I click on this, it's going to change the group color. And then just like before, I'm gonna go to poly group island and just click on this guy. And now I have it separate as well. Same thing, we can, if we wanted to, we could split this, right? We could do group split, say okay. And now, if you hold on the shift and hide, all of these, you can click on each one and see that they are indeed all separated, right? Which is very cool. And that gives us a lot of control, right? If we wanted to, for example, we can take the, you know, let's say the bottom one, I can grab my move, I can center it. Let me change the pivot. Let me just show you how this works. So let's say I want to put this over here. I'm going to lock this back up and check this out. Now I can control this, right? Now I can open his mouth and do whatever I want. That was the whole entire point of this, is that now we have full control over each part of the mouth, right? Awesome. So what do we do next? Next, we need to import our base mesh and start kind of collecting all our pieces. So for that, I'm gonna switch to some other tool. Let's just go to this one. I'm gonna press F. All right, and now what you wanna do is you wanna import the OBJ file that came from my Gumroad. So I'm gonna go to import, find the OBJ file and just say open, and that should give you something like this. This is just gonna be a high-res kind of a Dynamesh version of our base mesh, and that's gonna be perfect to get going, right? So now what I wanna do is I wanna take this and I wanna bring in the other elements from here, right? So we have all of this here. So to do that, let's just go to merge. We'll do merge visible to put them together just for this next step. Let's go back into our guy here and let's do insert. Let's just grab these merged elements here, and you can see they came in and they're down here in his belly, right? If we wanted to, we can of course let's do transparent, grab our move, change our pivot, and let's just put it into place. And we don't have to worry about this yet, but it's here for you know, for when we are ready to do the mouth, right? So that's going to be perfect. Really cool. All right, I'm going to select my strong male base mesh here. The next step for us is obviously going to be sculpting all of the detail, and including the face, right? All the detail on the skin here looks a lot like, almost like an elephant skin, and maybe sculpting this top, you know, this horn on top, and you know, we're gonna need the eyes, right? And I like his facial expression, he's screaming. So the ears are already good to go, right? Because if we're gonna do something similar like this, this already looks like it's under a mask, so that's good. We don't need any detail. So the first thing I would like to do is I would like to create this indentation, right? So if you look at the entire character, you can see that it almost looks like the whole character is just hugged in almost like a suit, right? And the only part that is not a suit, essentially, is just his face, right? So what we want to do is we want to push his face in and create the same kind of illusion of a mask, right? Before we start sculpting, you know, actual detail. So to do this, let's grab our brush, our standard brush, and let's just simply mask out the part of the face that is gonna be, you know, something like this, right? So I'm gonna press X to turn my active symmetry on. We have a lot of geo here, so we should be okay as far as the actual number of active points. And what we could do now is we can hold down the control key, and that's going to put us into mask pen mode. Make sure you have that as your option when you hold down the control key. All right, now we can just literally just start drawing the actual mask. So let's mask out all of this here, and I'm just going to roughly follow my reference here. So something like this is perfect. Hold down the control key. Let's bring this down and forward. And then right here, there's going to be something like this. All right, very cool. Now I want to obviously paint in all of this here. So I'm just going to very carefully go through and mask all this out as well. Once you get away from the edges, if you want to make your brush a little bit larger, you can hold down the S key, make it a little bit larger, and maybe go a little bit faster. All right, so that's looking good, right? Now, a quick question: what if you wanted to make this mask super sharp, right? Right now, you can see it's kind of jaggedy. What we could do is we can turn our polyframe on, and what we can do is we can do Control W, That's gonna assign a different color, right, to our poly group. Then we can jump into Lightbox and we can go into Brush, Smooth. Let's do Smooth Groups. Let's select that and say OK. Now if I hold on the Shift key, I can literally just go through and make this super sharp, right? This entire mask can turn into something that looks much cleaner, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I think something like this is perfect. All right, so that looks good. Now, how do we press this in and keep the edges nice and sharp? So for that, even though we are in high res, let's just use zModeler. So make sure you save your tool just in case. And to press the face in, and again, to maintain kind of the sharp edges. And you know what, I can actually clean up some of this. To maintain these sharp edges, let's just go to zModeler. Let's hover over any one of these little faces. I'm gonna go into extrude. Let's do polygroup all, right? Because we want to grab the entire face. And let's just make sure you don't have active symmetry on. And just simply press this in. And if you press this in, you can decide on the thickness of your mask. And you can see the nice thing about this, it's creating these really sharp, clean borders, right, which we want, which zModeler is perfect for. And the downside of that is going to be during the extrusion, because we're extruding inwards, it's going to have some overlapping, which we can clean up. So if I jump out of the polyframe, you can see that I have some issues right here in my mesh. And if I hold down the Shift key, I can just very quickly smooth. Let's turn on the active symmetry. Let's just clean up kind of these issues there, right? But now the cool thing about this is you can see we have this really sharp border, right? Even though we are in super high res. So we just used zModeler with kind of almost like a Dynamesh mode. It's kind of crazy, but I think it works, right? So that looks nice. And of course, at this point, if you wanted to adjust anything, you can just grab your move and just make sure you're in active symmetry, and you can adjust any of this here, right? You can even hold on the Shift key and actually make the lines sharper. And because we are in group mode, it's going to respect our groups for both the inner edge and the face and the outer edge. So essentially there's 3 different poly groups, right? You could see that. And if you hold on the Shift key, it's going to smooth them out and use all 3 to kind of make this really nice and sharp and clean, right? Which is amazing, right? Let's go around, make sure the mask looks good from all angles, and I'm pretty happy with this, right? Nice. Now, what would be the next step? The next step is going to be, let's insert this horn right in the middle, which essentially is just almost like a, you know, like a cone, right? So to get that going, I can go to Subtools, I can do Insert. Let's just grab this cone here. That's fine. And I'm not in a perspective mode. I'm gonna snap into the side view by holding on the Shift key. All right, so let's take the cone and kind of shape it into what we want it to be. Maybe something like this. Let's turn the polyframe on. We can see what's going on here. And let's just get it into position. And again, just scale it. And we'll do something like that. So I want the cone to be somewhere here, right? Very cool. I definitely like this nice bend as well. I'm gonna go into my gear, go to bend curve. Let's change the resolution to have one more right here. And now what I can do is I can start bending this. And by when I'm bending this, you can see that the bottom is not moving. And that's because my smoothness is set to 1, right? So you can control that. Make sure you adjust that if you needed to, if you want to keep the bottom still, right? So I'm gonna bend this like this, and I think that's pretty much perfect. I'm gonna go back to gears and say accept. Let's take a look. Very nice. Mine is super sharp, and you can see this one looks like it actually it's a little more round on top. So to do this, I can just simply inflate it. And by inflating it, it's going to give me a little more thickness. And then what I can do is I can hold on the Shift key and just smooth the top of it. And that's going to give me kind of a similar effect, what I'm seeing in the reference, where it's not, you know, as sharp, right? We can decide if we like the size. I think mine might be a little smaller than theirs, but my proportions are a little bit different as well. If you wanted to, of course, you can make it larger. All right, very nice. Once you are happy with it, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. And once again, make sure you keep saving your tools, right? So make sure you click save. And let's continue. I think the next step would be probably doing the actual facial expression. So let's go ahead and kind of dive into that. All right, so next let's just separate our face from the actual mask so we don't have to worry about you know, maybe redynamashing it or messing up our edges or anything like that, right? So to do this, I'm gonna do let's do Control Shift and click to isolate our mask. Let's do Control and drag to mask it, right? Control Shift and click to bring everything back. And now if I go into split, I can do split, you know, mask points, right? And if I click on that, you can see my face is gonna be on its own layer, and now I don't have to worry about messing up any of this stuff here, right? All right, and honestly, I didn't really want to grab this blue poly group, right? I wanted to keep that with this group. So how do I put this back, right? Right now, it put it on its own layer. What if I want to take this blue poly group and bring it back to the base mesh layer? So what I could do is I could just do group split and say okay. That's going to give me this border by itself. I can now move this back up and just do a merge down, right? I'm going to say okay. And now you can see that I successfully put the border back with the mask. All right, so we have full control over how these, you know, how this topology moves around. So that's good to know, right? Let's go back to here, and now let's just simply focus on sculpting our face. So there's many ways we can do it. We can turn this into Dynamash. We can use our sculpting tools. Now remember, we do have our teeth, right, ready to go. So I think the easiest way to do this is to, let's make this topology just a little more usable, a little prettier, right? So what I'm going to do is go to geometry, and let's just ZRemesh this, because now it's on its own layer. We could do whatever we want with it. We can give it thickness. We can, you know, use poly groups. Let's do that. So I'm going to go to ZRemesher, and I'm going to switch my target poly to, let's do 0.5. I'm going to leave adapt off, turn active symmetry on because my face is going to be symmetrical, and let me just simply ZRemesh this. All right, and now I have something along these lines, which is going to be maybe a little bit better to manage. And initially you are going to see some gaps in here. Don't worry about any of that. We can adjust this very quickly and very easily. But essentially what I want to do next is let me start creating some cavities for the eyes and the mouth, right? So again, the active symmetry is still on. I'm gonna go into my Z modeler, and let's just simply create, holding down the Alt key, I can make a selection of the eye socket, right? So I'll do something like this, and let's just decide, you know, what do we want to do here? Maybe we'll do something, I'm gonna grab all of these here, that's fine. And that's going to be kind of the my selection. All right, if I wanted to, remember, we can use the smooth, right, with the groups on. So we can always, holding down the shift key, we can kind of adjust this, and just following the reference, right? You have kind of a nice round bottom here. So we'll do the same, and you can decide the size of the eye. And here, if I wanted to maybe make this a little bit straighter, I could do that. All right, let's just decide if we like the size of the eyes. I think I do. I think that's pretty cool. I don't really need this anymore, so I'm gonna press spacebar, go to delete, and let's just do single poly and just click on that to get rid of it, right? We don't want any of that. And if we wanted to add a little thickness to this, we can always hover over the edge. We could do, let's do extrude. Let's switch it to mesh border, right? That's gonna grab the entire border here, and we can just simply push this back. Let's push this back a lot, right? And all of that is going to be in there. If we wanted to, we can also, of course, hover over this edge, go to bevel. Let's do edge loop complete, and let's just add a little, just be careful what you, where you click, but let's just add a little bevel, something like this. Holding down the shift key, I can straighten this out, and I have a little issue here, so make sure it's nice and straight. And now I have, you know, some kind of an eye socket going, right, which is going to be very useful. We'll insert a you know, a sphere there for the eye, right? All right, so that's looking good. We could of course grab our move brush, and if you wanted to, you could start kind of creating somewhat of an expression, like the eyes are, you know, somewhat angry. So we can do that. We can bring this down, create a little bit of a brow there, right? You can see the nose is kind of scrunched, so I can do the same. I can maybe scrunch this up and do something like this. Very cool. Here, of course, we're going to need a lot more geometry to create the nostrils, but let's not do this yet, right? Next, let's create the cavity for the mouth. And to do that, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to my Z modeler, hold down the Alt key, and just make a selection. Maybe all these faces here. And you can just decide how wide you want your mouth to be. Because he's screaming, maybe I can go a little bit more. And just like before, I don't really need any of this. So I'm going to go to Delete, Single Poly, and just click on it to get rid of it, right? Now I have something along these lines. What I could do next is kind of shape the mouth of what I need it to be. So I'm going to go to Move, and let's just make sure our symmetry is on. And let's just maybe sculpt this to be a little bit closer to what we're seeing in the reference, right? So he's going to be kind of a screaming. So this is somewhat straight, right? Then you have the lips. Then you have the side of the mouth kind of dropping down. I can take all of this bottom part here and just do something like this. All right, so that's looking good. Next, if we wanted to, we could touch up some of this here, just make sure it doesn't look too crazy. Just let me adjust. I'll just press this in just a little bit. Let me go into a solo, and when I did the mesh border, right, when we extruded the mesh border, it also created an edge for our face, right? You can decide if you like that, if you want to keep that or not. I'm not really sure if we need it. If you wanted to get rid of it, it's very easy. Just go to Z modeler and just go to Delete and do a poly loop, right? And you can just simply click to delete. Let me put my double on. So we can clean that up, right? That happened when we created this piece here. And I'm not really 100% sure if we even need this because we beveled this. So I'm going to maybe get rid of that as well. And just keep it nice and clean, right? So let me jump out of solo and take a look. Let's check out, before we create thickness for the mouth, let's just see where our teeth are. So I'm going to go to Subtools. Let me unhide that and take a look and see if we like what this is, right? I'm going to select my teeth, put them into better position. We can scale them and just kind of start getting them ready. You can decide if you want to keep the mouth closed, or maybe you want to, you know, open it up just like he has. If you wanted to open them up, we can go to solo. So if we want to bring this up, for example, we could do Control Shift and click. Let's do reset our pivot, put it back into position, and now we can control, you know, if you want to open this up or not. Let me jump out of solo so I could see, and maybe, you know, we could open this up, maybe do something like this. Let's do the same thing for the bottom one. Go back into solo, Control click to reverse it, and let's just maybe bring this down. All right, if you like that, that's great. Let's do Control Shift and click to get rid of the mask, and you can again decide where this is positioned. This is clearly needs to be kind of readjusted, right? And I think I'm gonna leave mine just like this. That's fine, right? Let me go back to the face, grab my move. Let's go into a side view. Make sure you're not in perspective view. Make sure your active symmetry is on. And from this view, let's just adjust this. You know, we'll adjust the face to make a little more sense. So I'm just going to simply just drag it into position. And we'll do something along these lines. Very cool. I can grab this piece here, and if I wanted to, I could, of course, center my pivot, make this just a little bit wider. And before we do any more sculpting, let's go back into the face. And now let's just simply create a pocket, like a mouth pocket, that is going to enclose our tongue and the teeth before we sculpt this more, right? So to do this, I'm gonna go into solo mode. And what I want to do is I want to take all of this, all of these edges, and literally just extrude them back, right? So I'm going to go to zModeler. Let's hover over the edge. Let's go to extrude. Let's go to extrude. Let's switch this to poly loop, right? And I'm just going to take this here and just push this back. And by pushing it back, you can see what I'm doing. I'm kind of creating like a really thick thickness there in the back, right? And that is exactly what I want, because now I can turn this into almost like a mouth pocket. All right, next let's go hover over the edge. Let's go to close, and let's just do a concave hole. So I'm just gonna click on it, and that's going to close this up. That's fine. Holding down the shift key, I can maybe smooth this out and just make it a little more round looking. And I'm gonna grab my move, make it a little bit larger, and just push this all back. So again, I'm just creating almost like a pocket, right, for the mouth. If we wanted to add more edges here, we can of course go to zModeler, hover over the edge. We can do insert, and let's do multiple edge loops, and let's just drag it just enough to give us maybe 2 rows. So I think that's pretty good. Holding down the shift key, I can smooth this just a little more. All right, let's jump out of solo and take a look. And at this point, it's going to be just a matter of adjustments, right? We have all the pieces in place, so we just have to adjust this and essentially make it look good, right? Right now, this doesn't really look too good. So I'm going to hold on the shift key. Let's hide this, and let's go ahead and just reveal the mouth and the teeth. And we can even jump out of the polyframe, but essentially what we want to do now is just make this look nice, right? So I'm going to push this back until it makes sense. At this point, if you wanted to, you can also z-remesh this, right? We can always go to z-remesher. Let's just pump this up to like 1. I'm going to say keep groups and do a z-remesh, and that's going to adjust my topology to kind of mimic, what I got a little bit better. If I wanted to, I can do auto groups to turn everything into one group, and of course start smoothing things out. Let's just maybe smooth this out, and at this point it's just a matter of getting it to where you like the expression, right? So of course we can also Control D to subdivide this to add a lot more resolution, and that's going to be important for creating something like the nostrils and so on. If I grab my inflate, I can start creating something that looks like a nostril. Let's do that. I can hold on the Alt key to push this in. And you can use any one of these brushes. You can use clay buildup or inflate or even the standard brush. So it doesn't really matter, but essentially you could start creating some of this detail, right? I could start inflating this area here. I can give them a little more of a cheek here. That's important. All right, so once you adjust it and hopefully get it to where you like it, this is could be very time consuming, but I just did it kind of quick. And the other thing we could do is we could adjust some of these teeth individually if you wanted to. You can go to modify topology, and even though this is all the same poly group, right? With the active symmetry turned on using move topology, we can turn on, let's turn on AccuCurve. And if we want to get these K9 teeth going, right, we could, for example, take some of this and just pull it down, right? And we can create almost like a little bit of a, it would be this one, I guess. Be more like a something a little more stylized and maybe dangerous, right? You could do that. Let me just make my brush a little bit smaller. And again, just pull this down just a little bit for a kind of a K9 effect. And we could do the same thing here. If anyone is a dentist out there, I might grab the wrong one, but I don't know. Just do something like this. Just so it looks a little more dangerous and interesting, right? And if I wanted to, maybe this looks a little too symmetrical here. Let me turn my accurate curve on, and we can mess up some of these, you know, teeth a little bit, right? Turn the symmetry off and just maybe make them a little more uneven. Just up to you, right? Personal preference, but a lot of times you want to maybe try to get away from anything that's super symmetrical. I think it makes it look a little more interesting, but it's up to you. All right, so let's say we like this. What would be the next step? We are definitely missing eyeballs. So for that, it could just be something as simple as just inserting a sphere. And obviously you can't see it well, so I'm gonna go to transparent mode and just size it down, right? Size it down. We can size it this way or use scale here, it doesn't really matter. But now we just need to put it into position, right? And maybe we can z-remesh this into something that could be used as an eyeball. So I'm gonna get into place. Let's jump out of transparency mode, see if we like this, and maybe push this back. I don't really care for him to have perfect eyes, right? I'm just gonna get him, kind of cheat and just get him aligned a little bit better with the socket. We could do that. I think that's fine, and that's pretty great, right? If we wanted to copy it to the other side, we could just do a mirror and do a mirror and weld, and that totally works. You know, if you wanted to continue adding more detail to the face, of course you can just keep subdividing it, Control D, and you know, you can use right here, if I want to do more of a sharp ridge, I can use a pinch if I wanted to. I can pinch all of this here to create more of a, you know, something a little nicer, right? We could do that. You can also use the, of course, Damien standard. Maybe smooth this out. So just using Damien standard, pinch, and, you know, all of these other ones, you can just get it looking nice and sharp. And you know, I'm keeping it somewhat simple and stylized. I'm not even sure I need eyebrows. I don't really need that. If I wanted to add a line here, we could do something like this. And again, it's totally up to you, right? So now we have the eyes, we got the mouth, we got the face. What would be the next step? The next step would be to this looks a little too low res for me. If I click, hold on the Alt key, I can select this piece here. We can Z-remesh this, or we can just do Control D to subdivide it. So the next step is going to be adding some detail, some skin detail. And this, to me, looks a lot like, you know, it's almost like an elephant skin. So of course you can, you know, search for, on the internet, search for like an elephant, or a hippo or a rhino, and then you can just import the alpha in here and use it that way. If we didn't want to do that, we could just select the mesh, and let's just see what is here by default. If I go to standard, right, make sure you keep saving your tool, that's important. Let's try to use standard to see what's here, right? So for our brush, I'm gonna leave it on dots for a minute. Let's go to alpha. Let's see what we got here. So we could use this alpha 60 to create the same kind of visual effect. And let's see how that works, right? So how would that work? So what I could do, make my brush a little bit larger, and instead of using dots, let's try to use spray, right? And what we could do, you could see we can just spray this on with maybe, let's do like intensity of 10, and just going in circular motion, you can very quickly create something that looks very similar, right, to what I'm seeing here. And then we can add these bumps on top, right? So this would be one way of doing it. Just very quickly, just go around the entire model, and in the circular motion, create almost like, you know, something that you would think would look like for like an elephant skin, right? So let me go ahead and do that really quick. All right, so I think that's pretty close, and let's see what else can we do. Now, another thing that you might notice in the reference is that he has these really strong veins going over his biceps. You know, to do that, you can just use the standard brush. Let's switch it to dots with alpha 1, and we can decide if we want to do symmetry or not, but essentially all we need to do is just simply, you know, maybe change the intensity a little bit higher to like 25. And we can just run the veins up the arm. And you can just create custom veins, right? Just using something as simple as standard brush. And of course, again, you can pull up references for this and see what you like. If you want to turn off the symmetry, you can maybe create something more custom, you know, very quickly, right? And it doesn't take a lot, but you can see right away it makes it a little more interesting. Honestly, right here it looks super symmetrical, but if we do end up posing him, that will probably break the symmetry. You know, we can decide if we want to add something for the legs. All right, very cool. And then to add the little bumps, for that we can just do, let's do a spray, and let's just simply choose some existing bumps like this alpha 07. I think it's perfect. Let's just see how that works. Maybe turn the intensity down. And you can do it like this, or if you wanted to have a little more control, you could do a drag and just drag these on. So we can see if we like that, or maybe this 23 one is a little bit better. Honestly, I like that better. That's very close to what I'm seeing here, in my personal opinion. But we can just do something like that all over his body, right? Maybe here would be a little bit larger. And I'm seeing them on the shoulders and a little bit on the arms. All right, what else can we add? You can see there's some folds, right? You can see some folds right here around the horn. So if you wanted to add that, again, there's many ways of adding folds. You can use, so there's a default scribe standard that's part of ZBrush. You can use that. If I select that, you can see what that's going to do. That's going to allow me to drag kind of curves if I do an add. And it's a clever way to add kind of a stylized looking folds. So maybe let's go ahead and use that. So you could use that, or you can use the CG cloth. Again, this brush is available on my UI if you download that.
If you are doing your folds and you feel like you need more geometry, you could always subdivide it, right? So one of the things I can do is press, I am at 1.2 million, so that is a lot, but it does look like I could use even a little more, right? And it's not a problem because we can crank up the total points all the way up as much as we, you know, as much as our computer can handle, because then we could just use that as a normal map detail for like a low res base mesh, right? And all of this beautiful texture, if this was a game engine, or if you wanted to animate the character, would be part of the texture versus actual geo detail. So I hope that makes sense, but don't really concern yourself with watching the points when you are creating like a, you know, like a high res game model. It doesn't really matter whatsoever, because you're gonna have to again redo the you know, the wireframe or topology anyways. So in this case, let's say I need more resolution, right? So if I do if I press Control D, you can see that my border is actually getting munched completely. And let me undo that. And I'll show you why. It's because if I turn the polyframe on, you remember that I accidentally separated this, right? So right now this green polygroup is actually, even though it's on the same layer, it's not really welded with this piece here, because remember we split it in the beginning of the video. So how do I fix this? Well, to fix it, it's really simple. All you need to do is just go to geometry, go to modify topology, and in here there's something called weld points, right? If I click weld points, it looks like nothing happened, right? But now if I press Ctrl D, you can see that now I'm not getting that weird thing that's happening, that was happening before. Let me undo that. Let's say I want to keep this edge. I don't really want the edge to be subdivided, right? So what I could do is go to crease, and I could just say crease border, right? I'm just going to click on this button here. And now if I press Ctrl D, you can see that looks like nothing happened. The edge is staying really nice and sharp, but now I'm at almost 5 million points. That's a huge difference, right? And while I'm zoomed in like this, I can also see that some of the mask is actually going inside the face a little too much. And I can also see that some of the face needs to be pulled back. There's some spacing there, maybe a little there. And one of my advice is always, as you're rotating the model when you're building stuff, if you see things, you know, even if you're doing something else, I think it's a really good idea to take care of it, because sometimes you might not see that angle again, right? Because you're just doing so many things. So like in this case, I needed to adjust my face, and I'm gonna leave it in here because that's important, right? Okay, cool. So now if I press Alt and click on my suit, I can of course do more stuff that's higher res, right? So let's say I want to use the CG cloth brush. You know, if I start using it, and let me just dial this down, maybe make my brush a little bit smaller. You can see that now there's more, right? There's more topology. I'm literally at almost 5 million points. That's a lot. That should give me a lot of points to play around and do folds and stuff like that. We can decide if I want to add folds in other places. You know, this is, it looks like to me like a skin, you know, suit. I could, you know, add some folds in other places. I don't know how, you know, tight his suit is fitting, but not really sure if this is, you know, if that is necessary for this character. But we could show that maybe, you know, it's some kind of a suit, right? And let's just maybe, I don't, it's not, this is completely not necessary, but let's just add a couple small details, right? And I know in the references, the guy has 3 toes. Our base mesh has almost like a human foot toes. And, you know, if you want to tackle that's really easy, right? All you need to do is just add kind of 3 spheres and just cut it to make it look like toes. So that's up to you if you want to do that. I don't think I'm going to do that. If we wanted to add more detail to the actual horn on top, maybe let's do that. Let's select the horn, press F, and let's take a look. We can subdivide this even more. And if I wanted to add some of this detail, let me go back to my standard brush. I'll do drag, and I'll do alpha 60, make it kind of large with symmetry on. And we can just drag this on. Maybe let's do a sub. And, you know, we can decide how deep we want this to be. Very cool. All right, so what would be the next step? So the next step is, now this is going to be like a high-res version, right? If we wanted to slap some texture on this, and obviously here's the cool thing about this reference is that this awesome-looking pose. There's so many different ways you can approach this. You could mask out, you can merge all of this together, right? And using masking, you can pose the character by just rotating things. You can use Z-spheres to create like a skeleton and pose them that way. You can use something called proxies, proxy rigging in ZBrush. So there's many different ways, but I think this character is so awesome that we should actually turn him into like a usable game character. So I say why stop here? Let's just take it all the way to, you know, game engine ready, right? Right now, this guy is out of control. He's 5.4 million. Let's create like a low poly version of him and, you know, run him through maybe Substance Painter, give us some cool textures and all of that. So to do that, what would be the next step for that? Well, the next step would be creating the low poly version so we can do our UVs, right? And to get that going, let's maybe leave everything as is, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a low poly version of each one of these pieces automatically using ZRemesher, right? So we're not going to manually create our topology. We're just going to do it automatically. So for now, I'm done with this reference. I'm going to close this. Let's go ahead and rename all of these, right? So this is going to be body. I'm going to call it height. So I know it's high. This is going to be the eyes, right? And I'm also going to call it high. Okay, so now one by one, let's deal with this and create low poly version of it, right? So what I like to do is I like to turn everything off. So I'm going to do shift click to hide everything and just deal with each element individually, right? So let's start with the face. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate it and I'm going to rename it. And instead of face high, I'm going to make a low version of it, right? So I'm going to say low. All right, and then let's go ahead and press F to zoom in. Let's turn our polyframe on, and now let's talk about this. So I'm gonna go into geometry and go to ZRemesher and just really dial it down manually, right? Again, this is currently symmetrical, so I'm gonna use active symmetry. I'm gonna say 0.5, and I'm going to say, let's go ahead and do ZRemesh. Now, the reason I'm hesitating is because we can actually use the groups to guide our topology for our low poly mesh. And I'm thinking if that's something we want to do, and I think it is, right? Because let's just take a look at how we can guide our topology and help ZRemesher out kind of manually, right? So check this out. If you have the active symmetry on, you can just press Control and just mask out let's do like a circle here, for example. So these are going to be our eyes, right? And we can tell ZRemesher that, hey, this geometry right here needs to be holding down Control and Alt. You can also clean this up. But we could tell ZBrush that this geometry right here needs to be you know, circular, right? So we can maybe, if you wanted to add like a blinking animation for the character, right? So you want to make sure you have good topology for this. So let's go back in here and do Control W, and now that's going to assign a different group for those eyes, right? You know, maybe we want to also be mindful about the nose being clean as well. So we can maybe select just the nose part. I'm not even really concerned about the nostrils, but do something like this. And same thing, I'm going to do, let's do Control W. That's going to be a different color. Let's do the mouth. I'm going to select all of that. Inside the mouth, like that whole pocket there, right? Let's just go all the way up to the lips. And just holding down the Control key, I'm just simply selecting all of that. And if you wanted to, you can turn this off for a minute. But it's just a nice little step to stay in control of our UVs, right? So this is going to be important. UVs and topology, that's what I meant to say. All right, cool. So I like this. That's pretty cool. Let's do Control W there. And I think that's pretty good. That's enough, right? So now check this out. We can do keep groups, 0.5, active symmetry, and let's do, we don't need detect edges, I don't think, but let's just do ZRemesh and see what that gives us. All right, and you can see that ZBrush is going to automatically follow what we tell it, right? And create like a low poly version of our face. And you can see now it's this is 800 polygons. So this is really good. And you can see this is totally low poly. It gave us edges where we need it to be. If we wanted to close the mouth, if we want to do blinking, you can see there's loops, and you know, everything looks really nice. If you wanted to adjust something manually, like for me personally, let's say I want to change this, because I'm going to also use polygroups for UVs as well, right? What if I didn't like this? Like this thing right here is a different color. You know, keep in mind you can always go to ZModeler, and we have full control over this, right? So we can hover over this, and we can go to poly group. Let's do single poly. And if you hover over this, it says right there, it says polygroup Alt equals new, or shift is how you pick a color. So that means if I click on this and press shift, right, then let it go, then come here and click, I can actually pick this color and color it with this. So a cool little trick if you needed to do any cleanup. But honestly, there's not much cleanup to do, and it's not really that important, but I think this totally works for the low poly version. So I'm going to go to subtools, and now you can see I have the low and high, and this is going to be great, right? Let's go ahead and go to this thing, and I no longer need to see the face, and let's do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename it. And instead of calling it horn high, this is going to be obviously low. And same thing, I'm going to go to geometry. I already have some subdivision on this. I don't really care. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete lower. And I'm just going to use ZRemesher for this as well, right? So 0.5, this is symmetrical. And let's just do... let's go ahead and do ZRemesh. All right, that's going to give us something along these lines. This is still way too high for a game model. So I'm going to do ZRemesh. I'll just do half. So I'm telling ZBrush, give me half of whatever this is, right? Let's just dial this down a couple times. And I think something like this should work. I think this is good. I'm not really liking what's going on there. Let me undo that. Maybe this is okay, right? I didn't really like the top. If you wanted to manually adjust this, maybe you're making like a really optimized, you know, good looking low poly character, you could always use ZModeler to delete some edges. You can go to delete, edge loop complete, and you know, this horn is not going to be animated, so we don't really need some of these edges here. We can simplify them very quickly, right? Manually, just control the geometry that way. So maybe, you know, something like this looks a little bit better. Now also keep in mind, we don't really need all of this here, right? Because that's going to be inside the mask. And again, if this is a game character, we could just hold on the Alt key, select all of this here, and even this here too, right? And let's just delete it. So I'm going to go to delete, single poly, and just delete all of that, right? So that's not important. That's going to be better too for you doing UVs, right? Because then we can just open it up and unfold it nicely. Okay, that's great. So that's done. Let's go to subtool. Now we're done with that. Let's go ahead and check out our teeth. I'm going to press F. And these are... we separated the tongue, but for some reason it merged back together when I brought it in. So, you know, we can decide if we want to separate it still for UV purposes, or maybe it's fine. And this is already somewhat, you know, optimized. It's kind of high, 8,000. Let's see if we can duplicate this, rename it, and let's see if we can deal with this as a low as well. Maybe I can go to geometry, ZRemesher, and I'm just going to do half of whatever this is. I don't really want active symmetry on, because remember we did mess up some of this stuff. So I don't really need active symmetry on, but I do want to say keep groups, and I'm going to say ZRemesh. And you can see that it's not doing well, and it's actually messing everything up. So that's not really working. And if you take a closer look, you could see that the tongue actually looks pretty good. And in this case, you know, if this was a game model, 8,000 polygons for this is way too much, right? And clearly in this case, because this is somewhat sophisticated or complex shape, you know, ZRemesher is actually not working in this situation, which is really interesting. You know, normally that's not a problem, but you can see as I'm doing it, it's completely destroying all the detail. And so if you ever run into this kind of situation, there's two options, right? One option, if this was a professional model, right, I would definitely take this, export this out into like Maya, and just you know, manually do topology in there, just to create kind of something that's super clean and perfect. If you don't want to do that, another alternative would be to just use zModeler and just manually try to get rid of some of these edges. So for example, these teeth are a little too dense for a game character, right? Like the tongue looks really good. You can see, you know, maybe there's a couple extra edges maybe that we don't need, but essentially you just want to keep just the edges that are holding the shape, right? So in this case, for example, let's just, you know, delete some of them. So let's say I delete this one, and it's very quickly simplifying the model, right? You can see I can delete this and maybe even this bottom one, right? I don't really need, and just go around the model and carefully remove any edges that are not as necessary to hold the shape. Like there's, you know, there's all this stuff here that you don't really need, right? So let's delete all of that. And you can see I'm already at 7,300 versus 8,000. I would probably even get rid of this one. All right, and then maybe inside the teeth here, I would probably address each tooth, you know, and then see which one of these you can delete to keep it nice and clean, right? Some of this is just too much. So again, it's totally up to you if you want to take the time and do that. So that's why that's one way of doing it. The other way would be if you really wanted to cheat and you need this to be just much lower, right? Let's say you just are not happy with this being this high. The other obvious alternative is going to be using Decimation Master, right? Let's take a look and see, you know, if we could use that. Right now I got this down to 5,500, but let's say I want to try to decimate it. I can go to Z Plugins, Decimation Master. I could do pre-process current, right? And let's say I want to reduce this by, let's say 20%. So I'm going to say decimate. You can see what just happened. The model changed the topology, right, to be looking much different. But if you look at the shape, it's holding the shape and the edges and the borders really nicely. And I just went from 5,000 to 2,000. Now this is actually much better for a game model. Normally you don't want to use triangles too much, right? Because if you are animating things, right? For example, if you want to try to animate this tongue, it's going to be a lot harder to, probably impossible to animate triangles. That's why you always want to have quads. It's for deformation. But in our case, I'm not planning on doing any tongue animations. And I really just need low poly teeth set that I can use, right? So in this case, this is actually much better and is indeed beneficial. So we can even see, you know, the most important thing for anyone who is new, who is doing, you know, like game models, is just to ask yourself, is this for animation? You know, if this was a rock or a statue, it doesn't really matter if it's tris or quads because it's not going to be deforming, right? The only thing you want to pay attention to is the shape and the form, right? So in this case, you know, if I wanted to dial this more, instead of 20%, let's go to 15, and let's just see if we can break this and see what is too much, right? So I'm going to say 15%, I'm going to decimate it. And you can still see that it's actually holding the shape still pretty well, right? And I'm at 1600. Let's go even more, let's go to 10, and just slowly see if we like this even better. This is going to be, you can see now it's 500 points. Now keep in mind, remember we started at 9,000. So this is a big difference, right? And honestly, I don't need it to be lower than this, but I think this is going to be perfect for what we're doing, right? And you can see what that looks like. Let me can turn the color off, but this is the topology of the mouth. And 1,000 polys or 557 points is pretty much perfect. I'm actually going to roll with this. This is going to be great, right? So I'm going to say that's great for that. Let's go ahead and go to the eyes. And same thing with the eyes, right? They're not really going to be, let me turn this off. They're not really going to be, you know, deforming. So we could use Decimation Master for that as well to triangulate them. Or, you know, this is so simple, I could probably use ZRemesher. So I'm going to say Active Symmetry because there's two of them. And let me just do, let's just do half of this, right? And let's just ZRemesh this a couple times. So I'm going to dial this down as much as I want, as long as this shape here kind of stays nice and you know, smooth or oval, right? And I think that's perfect. Now all of these back here are not going to be seen, so technically we don't need any of this, right? So let's just delete this whole poly loop right here. And now as I'm deleting it, you can see it's deleting the entire thing, and that's because this is it's spiraling versus looping. So it looks like a loop, but it's actually a spiral. That's why it's not working. So how do you fix that? Well, to fix it, you could just manually select this. Let me just hold on the Alt key and just make a selection of the faces that I don't want very quickly. So none of these are going to be seen. They're going to be behind the eye. Even this here, right? So all of that I don't need. So all of this I don't need. And let me just keep going. So I'm going to delete all of this here. So you can see how it's a spiral, right? It's not really meeting right the other end, but that's fine. So that's great. Great. Let me just delete single poly and just kill all these, right? Now this is going to be my low poly eyes, and I just need to make sure that if I check this, I can always turn my low poly face on, and just make sure that I'm not deleting anything that is not, you know, that is going to be seen. So clearly right here, all of these are still going to be hidden, right? No one's going to see any of this, right? So I can delete all of this extra geometry. It's a good way to keep it nice and clean. And now I can just click to delete it, and you can see that's much better, right? Very cool, and most importantly, again, it looks great from the front, right? That's all we really want. Great, so now we have low poly eyes, and now the most important thing is going to be and you know what, I accidentally used the high one, so let me do this. Let me duplicate this, and let me rename the duplicate to low. I forgot to do that. And on this one, on the original one, all I need to do is just dial this back down to the beginning, right? So we started out, you know, somewhere here. That's fine. So now I have high and low. forgot to do that. All right, let's go to this one, and this is going to be pretty much the most important piece, right? All right, so now we just literally need to create a low poly version of this, right? So same thing, I'm just going to duplicate it and go to rename. This is going to be low. And just like we did with the face, let's just tell ZBrush, let's just give ZBrush some guidance, right? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to press Control, go into my lasso, and let's just create some groups with this, right? So for example, I want to take my hands, select all the hands right here, select that, and do Control W. And I'm going to tell ZBrush, hey, keep these separate. This is a separate group. Let's do the same thing with the foot. I'm going to select all of this here, do Control W, and that's going to be my foot. Kind of a fast and cheap way of doing it, right? I'm going to do, let's do this, the thigh. Oops, let's just maybe grab all of this here, and we'll go to the knee. And this section here could be separate as well, right? And it's kind of hard to see. I did press Control W, but it's kind of the similar pink to this one. That's okay. All right, and then let's do the same thing maybe with the, let's see, what else can we do? Let's just see if this works, right? I'm gonna try to use this. So I'm gonna go to Geometry, ZRemesher. Let's tell ZRemesher to, right now it's at 4.8 million, right? Well, that's insane. We need something much lower, and this does need to be quads, right? Because we are going to be, you know, deforming it into a pose, right? So we want something nice. So before we do anything crazy, let's go ahead and do let's do save. All right, and you can see that my geometry has subdivision levels. Now, because I'm doing a low version of this, I don't really need that. I'm gonna go to 1, and I'm gonna delete higher, right? Now I'm at 1.2 million, and what I need to do now is go to ZRemesher. Let's do something like 4, or even let's try 5 and see what that looks like. So I'm gonna do a target of 5,000. I'm gonna say keep groups, because we just created these custom groups, right? It is symmetrical, so that's fine. And let's just see what that gives us. All right, so this is what we have. We can decide if we like this. This is about 10,000 polygons, but you can see the geometry is nice, and it's quad based, and it's looking pretty good, right? It's probably not as nice as if we did it manually, but for something that took seconds, this is pretty awesome, right? And if you wanted to dial this even lower, let's do half and do ZRemesh. All right, so now we have something like this that takes us down to 5,000 polygons, and you can go back and forth and see, you know, if you want to maintain all of this detail or maybe not, right? So it's up to you, depending on what kind of game, you know, character you want, right? Do you want it to be more detailed and high res, or do you want it to be, you know, like this, and the rest of the detail is going to be driven by textures? So you have full control. In my case, I think this is fine, right? I don't really need it to be too low, so I'm going to go with this one. All right, so that's great, right? So now we have all of our low and high are kind of separate. So let's just combine our low together so we can do UVs, and maybe we can do that automatically as well, right? So I'm going to take all the lowest pieces and move them up. So this is going to be my bodysuit. These are going to be the eyes. Let's just move them all the way up. And then the next one down is going to be the teeth. Move that up as well. I got my low poly horn. And finally the face, right? Just move that up. So now essentially I just separated the low section from the high, and now I need to just simply merge down all the pieces, and we can even actually make these visible, right? And this is our low poly model right now, right? Now let's just go ahead and merge these down so we can do our UVs. So for that, I'm gonna go to merge. I'm gonna do merge down, and I'm gonna merge them all the way down to the body, right? Very cool. Next, let's go ahead and turn on our polyframe and take a look. All right, so this model right here is 12,000 polygons, and this is definitely kind of a low poly version, right, of the character. So we just went from like 5 million to 12,000. That's pretty insane. I think that's pretty cool. And there's a lot of optimization that we could still do, right, with the fingers and the feet, right? But just to move this kind of fast and move along, let's move on to the next step, which is going to be the UVs, right? To do the UVs automatically, let's go to Z plugin and let's jump into UV master. And again, this guy is symmetrical, so I'm going to use symmetry on. Definitely turn this on, right? Because we have all these nice poly groups. So that's important. All right, so make sure you save your tool. And now let's just do unwrap. Very cool. We can see flatten. We can see what our UVs look like. Here's what I have. If I wanted to unflatten it, I can always do check seams. And that's going to show me where the seams are. So, of course, we can manually control this as well. But ZBrush did put this in the center, which is nice. And I think, again, for the sake of speed, I'm just going to roll with this. And but there is a way to control the seams, right? And I have videos showing that as well. You can just crease. You can actually drive the seams using creases, right? So you can put that down and rework the UVs if you wanted to. Another way you could do it is you can enable control painting and draw, where you want the seams to be. You can also use poly paint and do it that way. Then use poly paint to drive the seams. So many different ways. But in this case, just again for the sake of speed, I think this is gonna be fine, right? So I'm just gonna uncheck that and let's roll with this. All right, so great. So now we have the low poly version of our character. We have our seams, our UVs, right? What would be the next step? Well, the next step is going to be exporting out low poly and the high poly to Substance Painter so we can bake it, right? So let's move on to baking. So I'm going to export this out, and I want to make this, let's export this out as FBX, and this is going to be the low, right? So I'm going to call it Rhino low _low. Very cool. I want, because we merged everything, we don't need all, right? You don't want to export all this other stuff. So I'm going to say selected, right? Because I just want this layer. And I'm just say okay. All right, so next we need the high res version. So make sure you save your tool and let's just delete this. I'm going to say delete low. So now I'm just left with all my high stuff, right? This beautiful model here. And again, it's 4.8 million. That's way too much for Substance Painter. Even for baking, that's a little bit too crazy. So how do we quickly optimize this just for baking purposes? So what I could do is I could say merge visible. That's going to give me a different subtool, and you can see now there's no more layers. It's all merged together. And to get it down from 5.4, I can just go ahead and use decimation master. So I'm going to go to decimation master. I'm going to say pre-process current. All right, once it finishes, I'm going to say decimate current at 20%. That's going to take me down to 1 million. I believe it's still too high. Let me dial this down to 15% and decimate that. All right, now I'm at 817,000. If I turn my polyframe on, you could see that it's still super dense, right? So it's holding all of our information beautifully, and you can't even tell the difference between the 4.5 million and the 800,000. And the 800,000 is going to be perfect as the high-res guide for baking at Substance Painter. So let's just take this and export this out. And on my end, I'm actually choosing to do OBJ instead. So I'm going to do hi and say save. All right, nice. Now let's jump into Substance Painter. All right, in here, I'm going to say File, New. Let's switch this to 2K, select our file. I'm going to grab my low OBJ and say Open. So here is what I'm seeing as far as the low poly version goes. And honestly, I have a couple issues, right? One of them is this face gap on my model personally, but everything else looks pretty good. So I'm actually going to jump back into ZBrush and fix this and re-import my model. All right, so I made the adjustment. I just simply pulled the face back, and now I think that's a little bit better, right? You can see what that looks like. So this is how it comes in. And now let's go ahead and bake this right away. So I'm going to go into my texture set settings here, go to Bake Mesh Maps, and let's just do some baking. So I'm going to set this to 2K, and I'm going to high definition mesh. Let's go ahead and select our high def one. All right, once it comes in, make sure you don't have any red areas. If you do, you might have to adjust some of the distances. In my case, this looks pretty good. I'm going to set the anti-aliasing to 4, and I'm going to leave everything as is, and just simply do, let's go ahead and say bake. All right, once it finishes, I'm going to say return, and this is what I'm seeing, right? One of the things I personally like to do is I like to change my lights to this glazed one and kind of review the model. So this is pretty awesome, right? So you have the high definition model baked over the low topology. And if you wanted to see the wireframes for whatever reason, you can always go to display settings, and down here you can turn on the show mesh wireframe. And this is nice. You can just kind of preview and really appreciate the fact that this is a somewhat low poly version with all this detail on top, right? So that's pretty awesome. And from this point, we can of course use this to create nice looking textures. And then let's throw this into Maya and do some quick rigging so we can maybe pose this guy, in a cool pose, right? All right, so for this, let's bring up our references once again. All right, and let's use our reference to kind of use similar, similar coloring. One of the things I suggest you do is save. And now for texturing, let me delete the default one that is given to us. And one of the things that I personally like to use for this kind of stuff is this one called Bone Stylized. Or at least that's what I'm going to do. You guys are welcome to do whatever you want. You can download this from the Substance Painter portal, right? It's a material that's included with Substance Painter. So I'm just going to take this guy and drag it onto my layers, and right away I could see something really awesome, right? I like all this different shading, and it's giving me kind of this stylized look. Obviously, I don't want this to be this bone color, right? I wanted to have it, I could use it for the top horn, but maybe not for the actual skin. So let's adjust this. Let me actually duplicate this. And for the duplicate, I'm going to create a black mask. I'm going to grab this tool here, Polygon Fill, and I'm going to switch it to Mesh Fill, and I'm just going to click on the horn, right? The horn is fine as far as the color goes. I think that's great. All right, so that's going to, and we can, of course, rename this as that horn. That's fine. Let's go back to the skin one, and let's just change the color, right? So I don't want it to be this color. Let's open this up. And instead of this base being this color, let me just use this simple thing, and maybe I can do like a grayish blue for him as well, right? So for the dirt, I'm just gonna choose something just a little bit darker, right? And you can go back and forth and make adjustments and see what works. But I really want to make sure I can see that nice ambient occlusion detail that's part of this material. That looks really good in my opinion. And I like this. This is pretty cool.
Next, I definitely don't want that to be applied to the face, right? So let's go ahead and rename this to skin, or I should say suit, I suppose. I'm going to right click on this and do a white mask, right? And then go to our mesh fill and let's just click on the face, and I have to flip my mask. So I'm gonna click on the face, I'm gonna click on the eyes to kind of mask those out, and of course the teeth, right? Very nice. For the skin, I'm gonna go into my materials. Let me just type in skin, see what I have here. So I have skin face. That's pretty much what I want. So I'm gonna grab that, throw that on top, and I think this will work. Let's go ahead and do a black mask and select the, I'm gonna select the skin. All right, so that, I think that looks pretty good. All right, for the tongue, I'm gonna go out of there, and you know what? I'm just gonna use this bone stylized for the tongue as well. Let me drop this down, and let's go do a black mask and select all of that here. And I think the teeth are pretty perfect, right? I don't really care about him having white teeth. That's great. I like these here. It would be nice to add some kind of a pupil here, right? Maybe we could do that too. And the tongue needs to be red, right? Let's just add a fill layer, right? And I'm gonna press Alt, click on the color, and let me just select something that looks, you know, kind of like the tongue, right? I'm gonna do, let's just decide what we like. Maybe something in this range here. I think is pretty good. And let me add a black mask to this as well. And now, of course, we just need to use the black mask to add the, you know, the actual masking on top. So let's just go ahead and do that very quickly. If we wanted to see this a little better, we can always go into 3D, 2D view and find our tongue, which looks like it's right here. All right, I'm kind of doing it, you know, I'm kind of doing it fast. The best way to do it, obviously, if you want to have more control, is to separate the UVs and then just do a fill in color. And so I didn't do that, so that's fine. I'm just gonna do it kind of a, not cheap, but kind of a quick way, right? And I think that's pretty good. At this point, I could still control the color of the tongue by just simply selecting this. And if I wanted to, you know, I can make it any color I want. Maybe something like this is even better, right? Very nice. All right, and maybe we want the inside of the mouth to be, oh, I see some issues there as well I need to fix. But let's say we want to match the color with, you know, with this. Remember, we do have a poly group or UVs for that, right? So let's go ahead and go into our mask. We'll do polygon fill, choose UVs, and just simply click on the inner part. And that's gonna automatically take care of that, right? All right, and then for the eyes, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but I can create a new layer. I can go into my brush. Let me do a hard brush. And just using the color, we can just turn on the symmetry and just simply drop the eyes in, right? I think that's pretty good. Let me go into, let's give him blue eyes. All right, so that's a nice little effect I could do. Just kind of maybe pop the eyes a little more, you know, add a little darker circles. And of course, that's up to you if that's something you want to do. I think it adds a nice little effect. If you wanted to add some red cheeks, you could do that, of course. Let's add another color. Maybe let's do red. And I can just do basic soft color here. And, you know, we can add a little red into the cheeks and maybe the nose. And it's a little too much, right? So let's adjust the flow. And you can see that's gonna give it kind of a nice effect. Right there. And you know, you can spend as much time as you want on this, but I think I'm pretty happy with this, right? I think that looks good. If you wanted to do a quick preview, you can of course jump into iRay and see how that's looking
in Substance Painter. I think what I'm going to do is let's bring this next into Maya, and let's go ahead and rig this and put him in some kind of a fun pose, right? So that would be our, I think, our next step. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and export out my textures. And I'm just going to leave it as the default PBR. That's fine. PNG, that's good too. And let's switch it to 2K. And I personally like to use the background color, just a personal preference for the petting. And that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and choose the location. I'm gonna make myself a textures folder and say export. If I wanted to see what the textures look like, we can of course sneak a peek and see. All right, this is what they look like. Essentially, we just want the normal, the color, and roughness. All right, very nice. So next, and if we did want to take a look, let's look in iRay. We can see what that looks like. All right, so he looks pretty good in iRay. You probably wouldn't want to run into this guy in the forest, but here he is. All right, I'm gonna jump into Maya next. Okay, so here I am in Maya. Let's go ahead and do File, Import, and let's grab our let's import our LowPoly model, and you can see it comes in really tiny, so we are gonna have to make it a little bit larger. Let's just make it large enough where it kind of makes sense for these units here in Maya. If you press spacebar, you can go into a side view, press Shift A to realign everything. Just make sure he's kind of somewhat standing on the floor, right? And of course, if we wanted to, we can select the mesh, go to modeling, mesh display, and do soft edges. That's going to make it look a little nicer. If we wanted to plug in the textures from Substance Painter, all we need to do is just go into the Substance tab. If you don't see that, go to Windows, Settings, Plugin Manager, and here type in Substance and just activate all the bundles for the Substance Painter, and then you should see the tab. And once you see the tab, you can go into this Apply Workflow to Maps button, which will allow you to select multiple maps, the PBR maps from Substance Painter. And if you just select them all, right? Let's go ahead and select them all and say select. They should automatically populate themselves. If you don't have ambient occlusion, let's go back into Substance Painter. If you don't have that in Substance Painter, if you go to File, Export, and switch the output template to Mesh Maps, that's gonna give you ambient occlusion as one of the options, right? And if you hover over these, you can see what they are. So if you just uncheck everything else and just export ambient occlusion, it's gonna give you that map as well in case you want it. And then in Maya, you can plug it in. So in my case, I did export it out and I have all of this. So I'm gonna say apply. And now to actually see the textures on the model, I need to select the model, right click, and go to assign existing. It's gonna be this first one, AI standard surface. I can select that and turn the lights on, right? Turn the textures on, or I guess the lights off, right? There's no lights. And you can see the textures kind of populate themselves, and you can see what that looks like, right? If you wanted to bring in some lights, let's turn the lights on. Go to Arnold lights, Sky Dome lights, and now if you go to the attribute editor, in here you can plug in the HDRI map, right? If you don't have one, go to hdrihaven.com and download one. But in here you can just plug in an environment map that will be used as a reflection map for our character, right? So in my case, I'm just going to grab one. I usually always use the same one. That's this one here. I'm going to say open, and you can see what that looks like. If you don't want to see the background, you can always hide it by going to show and just turn the lights off, right? And now you can see the PBR textures in Maya environment, right?
which is really cool. It does look like there's a little bit too much roughness on him, on the face, right? I can always adjust that by going to Material Attributes, go to AI Standard Surface here, and the roughness is a little too crazy, right? So we can always adjust the weight, maybe, and we can also adjust the color, maybe tone it down a little bit, right? And we can also, of course, apply different roughness in Substance Painter. So in here, you know, if I select the face, right, the skin for the face probably should have different roughness settings than the suit, right? So that's kind of important. So if I select the roughness here, of course I can adjust it, right? This is going to be super shiny, you know, and then for something a little more realistic, it should probably be somewhere in this area. So you could do it this way, you know, you can adjust it in here, or you can just adjust it in Maya, or you can even disconnect the roughness if you wanted to, right? You can just break the connection and use kind of this roughness, default roughness, to adjust, you know, whatever you like. So many different options, right? Let's just go with this for now, that's fine. All right, so another thing we could do is let's select our character, go into the channel box, and in here you can see we changed the Y position and the scale of our character. So we should go to poly modeling and do a freeze transformation to kind of zero this all out, right? We can also do Control S to save our scene so far. All right, very nice. The next step would be to maybe add kind of a simple rig, right? How would you do that? How would you rig this character for some, you know, maybe you want to pose him in a fun way, or you know, if he's a game character, maybe we want to get him moving, right? So for that, I can go to Human IK and I can create a skeleton, and then one will just be kind of dropped into place. And if you click on this little button here, you can see it's going to allow you to see through the mesh, right? Which is cool. And now the only thing you need to do is just kind of quickly align the joints with the mesh, right? So the best way to do this is just go into the front view. Let's go ahead and turn this on. And in here, you can decide if you want to use the lights, or you can turn the lights off and turn this button on called Use Default Materials. So it's going to be maybe sometimes easier to see. And then of course you can also turn off the lighting, right? So you can see even better. And in here, essentially you just want to align this stuff. So if you click on the joints, obviously you want to put the, you know, the pelvis is right here. And let's do the legs. This is going to be like the hip, right? We got our knees, and we can just do one side and just copy it over to the other side. So this is going to be kind of the ankle, right? And this is going to be the foot. Very cool. If I wanted to, I can move this up. These are going to be kind of my clavicles here. This is going to be the arm right here, somewhere around here. This is going to be my elbow, right? And this is going to be my wrist, so I can put that into place here. And the head, let's look at the head from the side view. I can go into the side view. Let me do the same thing. I'm going to turn off the lights and turn on the X-ray, and my default is turned on as well, so I could see. All right, and then in here, I'm just going to find where the neck is, and then put this kind of in the middle of his head, because this is going to be the kind of the head controller. And we can readjust the skin weights if needed, but this is going to be essentially what the skeleton should look like, right? And let's look at the perspective view. This leg is all messed up, so we can select this one and just do mirror left to right, right? And that's going to adjust that very quickly. And then lastly, of course, the arms, right? So we have 5 fingers, and currently the skeleton is set to have all 5 fingers. You can decide if you want this many joints. You can simplify it if you don't want to have that many. right? You can switch this to, you can see right now it's 3. If I say 2, for example, it's going to be, you know, a little more simplified, but maybe it's easier to get them into position. And he doesn't really have toes, right? So I'm just going to leave that off for now. And if we wanted to, we could maybe actually put the foot join more in the middle, right? So like somewhere here, and that's going to give us a little room for the toes. If you wanted to activate the toes, you could do that. You know, if you want to deal with that, that's how you would do that. But let's just do something simple, right? I'm going to do this. And now to align the hand, this is a little bit of a kind of the most annoying part of this all rigging part is always the arms and the hands. And because he's not in T-pose, right? It's extra annoying, but essentially all you want to do is just take each joint and kind of align it where it needs to be, right? So like this is going to be the thumb here, and then you want to do, you know, this is going to be the bend of the thumb, right? You only have one bend for the thumb, and you do something like this. And as you rotate it, you just want to make sure to place these into proper place. And if you want to move this without moving this one, you can hold down the D key, and then that's going to allow you to move it without moving the child, right? So you can move the parent without the child. So you could do that, and just take your time and align it, and just, you know, make it, it's a little bit forgiving. It doesn't need to be precise, but you know, it just has to make some kind of a sense as far as the moving goes. So let me go ahead and do these 4 fingers real quick. I'll just fast forward this part. All right, once you align it, again, it's a little bit of a battle, but there's no way around it. Once you align it, just select the arm and just copy it to the other side, and you should have something along these lines. It should be pretty good, right? And now if I let's go ahead and save this. And to make the bind, right, all we need to do is just select the mesh, hold down the shift key, select the joints, and then if you go into rigging under skin bind skin, let's go ahead and reset this. We have a few different options, and we can decide, you know, would we like or would we want to try bind method. Let's just, for example, try geodesic voxel, and I'm going to leave everything as is and just do apply and close. All right, and now if we attempt to move any of these joints, it should start moving the mesh, right? So here's the mesh for kind of the belly, and of course there's going to be some adjustments that are going to be, you know, necessary, right? And there's going to be the arm, the head, I'm sorry, and there's going to be the upper chest part. The arms are probably going to be somewhat, you know, of a problem, right? Because the mesh is so thick. So there's going to be some weight painting necessary there. This is going to be kind of the elbow, and this is going to be the wrist. We can test all of that, but it's, you know, it should be good enough for you to take the time and maybe pose the character in something that is appealing, right? You have full control over that. So for example, if he's running, you could do something like this, where this leg goes up or goes back, and this leg goes, you know, a little bit forward. And it's definitely going to be a lot easier to do it this way than doing it in, you know, in ZBrush, where you have to mask everything out piece by piece. So in here, it's just a matter of deciding, you know, what you want to do and what the pose is and all of that. But if I wanted to reset this back after I messed with it, I can select the middle, I can right click, go to select hierarchy, select all the joints, and even though it says 0, if you select all of these, press 0 and press enter, it's gonna zero out to the back to the initial pose, the pose that we used to bind the skin. So keep all of that in mind. All right. I'm trying to figure out how far I should take this. The other thing we should do, you could do if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and save this. If you select the joints, go to Human IK. In here, there's something called Source. If you switch this to Control Rig, you will see that it's going to give you controllers for all the elements, right? And that's nice because you can then, for example, grab this middle piece. If you want to do a little bit of animation, you can do that. And of course, again, it is going to require some weight painting to clean things up. But if I, for example, grab this wrist and attempt to move the hand, you can see that it has the IK and FK all built in, right? So it's just a matter of figuring out what you need and what you want to do, right? Let's test the head. I'm going to grab this head here and let's just attempt to rotate it. So just for this exercise, maybe, you know, this is kind of crazy right here. But let's say I needed to adjust some of the weights. How would you do that? So let's say I want to, let me go back to the middle. Let's say when he turns his head, I want the jaw to kind of follow a little more. This right here actually works. I think that's actually pretty awesome, honestly. And that's very cool. But let's say you want to add do a little skin weights to make this a little bit better, right? Let me just demonstrate it one more time. If I grab the head and rotate it, I want the chin to follow, right? What is the process of adjusting skin weights? So to do that, all you want to do is select the mesh, right? And let's jump back out of the control rig to the skeleton. And now if you select the mesh, you can go to, and by the way, I strongly suggest saving this as a version that is named bind, right? So right now it's called rhino.mb when we set up the joints. Usually what I personally do when I create the bind between the joints and the mesh, I always save another version, and this way if I ever needed to go back to the version before I bind something, if I'm adjusting things, it's good to have two. So keep that in mind. Let me do that actually on my end. I'm just going to call this Rhino bind, right? That means he's connected. If I select this mesh, I can go to skin, paint skin weights, and click on options. And now if I right click on this joint here, it should say select influence. If I click on that, you can see, let me turn off my outliner and turn off the color ramp. You can see the influence that this joint has on the head, right? Everything that is somewhat white is going to have more influence than something that's gray or black, right? And you can test that too. If I grab this joint here and start to move it, you can see how the part that was gray is not really responding as much as the part that's white, right? So what does that mean? If you go back into skin weights, if you adjust these, if you paint this, right, and assign it to this joint, then that will be more control, right? So how do we do that? So what you want to do is there's a couple different ways you could do it. You can use the brushes, so you can paint it. So I could say right here, mode, paint, brush, for example, let's do soft brush, and opacity 100%, value, let's say 100%. And I can literally, holding down the B, I can control the size of my brush, and I can just paint weights. So if I paint all of this white, right, while this joint is selected, that means all of this here is going to be 100% linked to this joint, right? And now if I attempt to, let me paint all of this. Now if I attempt to move anything here, let me do the eyes, everything, all this stuff, right? If I move this joint here, all of the mouth that I just painted, you'll see is going to be solid, right? It's going to be responding 100%, whereas all of this is not. So the best way to deal with this is this. I'm going to select the mesh, do this. I can go into face mode. I can double click on the face, hold on the shift key, select the eyes, select the mouth, and what else can I select? Let me select this edge here all the way around. And now if I press shift and period on my keyboard, I can even grab all of these here. And all of this should be 100% too. And let's say I'm gonna grab all of this stuff, right? And you know what, let's do one more. I'm gonna shift and period to grow it even more, all the way over here, okay? And now what I can do is I can go back into the paint mode, and you can see all of these are selected, and this joint is still selected, right? So now we have the points marked. Now we have the points selected, and we have the joint selected. So which means we can flood or assign. Think of the word flood as like assign all of these points to this joint. So if I say assign it 100%, right? That's right here, value 100 or 1. If I say flood, you can see everything turned white, and that means all these points are now 100% controlled by this joint there. And let me demonstrate that. If I go and select this joint, right? Let's go into object mode and we'll select this joint. And now if we attempt to move it, you can see how it's affecting the head 100%, and it's no longer has that stretching effect, right? So, you know, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe you wanted the mouth to be open. So this is how you control the weights, right? So right here, for example, this looks a little weird. So I can move this joint up, create this imperfection, then select this, go back into skin weights, and maybe, you know, now I want to smooth this, right? Holding down the B key, make this a little bit larger and just smooth this here, and literally just create more of a gradient, kind of a fall off under the chin, right? So we could do that. If something starts to get crazy, like right here, this guy seems to be out of control, I can select him, hold on the shift key and grow my selection, grab things around him as well, and then go back into the paint mode and then click on this little hammer. Now the hammer is gonna average everything around, and that's amazing, really amazing and powerful tool, because you can very quickly clean things up and average points around. So let me do the same thing here, go back to paint and do another average, and you can see how it cleans it up, right? Now if I grab this and begin to move it around, you can see that now it's going to be a much better job, right? Deforming. So that's essentially is the process for all, adjusting all the weights for all the joints, and it's somewhat time consuming, so I'm not gonna go through and do all of that, but I think we got, you know, to a good place where you can probably tinker a little more and just finish this off. And again, if I want to reset this, I can go to select hierarchy, let me reset this back to 0, and then of course I can activate my control rig. And now if I grab the head and try to move it around, you can see that the deformation is going to be much closer to what it was intended to be, right? So, all right, so then, you know, it's going to get more and more technical, but this should get you pretty far as posing. And one last thing, if you're brand new to Maya and you wanted to do, you know, like a render, right? Let's just do like a quick test render. Let's maybe grab his face, bring it down. I'm gonna grab his arm. Let's just do something like this, where maybe he's moving forward a little bit, maybe something like this. And you know what, let me turn my mesh off so I don't select it. And let's just put him in some kind of a fun pose here. So maybe he can move, lean forward actually. And if he's leaning forward, he's probably gonna be looking up. And just like the reference, in the reference, he's kind of doing something like this. Let's just do like a cheap version of this, kind of something somewhat similar, right? Let's turn this way. This back leg is back, so I'm going to take this, and if I wanted to rotate this, it's not going to let me because it's pinned down in the human IK here. But if I click this little button, it's going to release all the pinning. So you can see they're pinned, right? This button is going to temporarily release it, so I can actually move this back, right? And try to maybe put them in the fun pose. So let me do something, you know, like this. I can rotate the leg, rotate all of this here, make it look like he's running. And then this leg is forward, right? So I'm going to take this and do something like that. And again, it's just a matter of taking your time, and this is not something you can rush with, right? But you can make something really, really cool looking. But now you can see it looks like he's running forward, right? And then right here is where you would want to maybe adjust some of the skin weights, or sometimes you could cheat and turn the character, you know, where you can't really see it, right? But let's say you like something like this and you just want to do a quick render. What would be the next step? To get this rendered, all you need to do is just go into your settings here, and in here make sure the render is set to Arnold, and the image format, you can choose what that should be, maybe a PNG, and then the preset, you know, if you want to do like a 1K square image, that's fine. Let's see what else. Arnold rendered. This is going to be the quality. So the quality, maybe you want to pump this up a little bit. You don't want to do too much because then it's going to take a long time to render each image, right? So you also have imagers and post stuff. So if you want to do like a denoise, if some of this rendering gets super noisy, you can use this to denoise stuff. But let's say I want to render this and see what this looks like, right? So I can go to Arnold, let's do a render and take a look. All right, so this is what my current settings look like. I definitely don't want this background image. So I can go back to the outliner, select my sky dome light here, and go to the attribute editor, and under camera I can turn the visibility off, right? I don't want that. Okay, and that's going to be good. My roughness is turned off completely. I can't even see it. I can go back to the material attributes, and let's just give it some roughness. I think that's going to be better, right? And you can see there's no rim light whatsoever, so the image is kind of getting lost. Maybe that's not good. Let's add another light. And you can see how it looks different in the viewport versus the render image, right? So that's kind of interesting. Let's go to Arnold, lights, and let's add a area light. And I can't see it because my lights are actually turned off. So I'm going to turn my lights back on so I could see them. And here's the area light, right, that we just dropped. We can select it on the outliner and move it back. And let's use this as a rim light. So I'm going to make this much larger and of course rotate it. You can see that it's pointing the wrong way. So let's do something like this. And this is very similar in all the applications, whether you're using Blender or Maya. All of this is exactly the same process, right? So I can point the light to the back of him and use that as my rim light. Now, how can I see how much this rim light is affecting this character? For that, I need to use something called Light Editor. So Light Editor is going to be right up here. If you open that up, you can now control your lights. So the sky dome, if I turn this off, I can see that my backlight is not doing much of anything as far as the rim light goes, right? So I definitely need to increase the intensity. So let me increase this a lot. I'm not really sure by how much, but let's just start adding zeros and numbers until we see something that makes sense. Let me do like 15. And let's do one more. So this is a little bit better. Now we can start seeing some kind of a rim light. We can also change the size of this. That's gonna change how the light affects the model, right? We can also, of course, rotate it. And now we have a nice rim light So let's turn this sky dome back on, and now we can see what that looks like. And now if we go back to Arnold and do a render, we see a much different result, right? Definitely need more lights, and you know, needs some love. But I just want to kind of quickly show you what goes into this, right? And now if you like it and you get it perfect, you can just save it as a PNG, and that's going to save you a transparent image, right? So you can do a sequence. If this is an animation sequence, you can just export out image sequence and bring it into like Adobe Premiere, and everything will be transparent. All right, so I think that's pretty much as far as I should take this, because this is going to be, you know, the more you fix it, the longer it's going to get. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you made something cool, and I'll see you guys in our next one.